He divorced me at 50 and moved his new wife into our house. He told me I was too old, too boring, that after 25 years he needed someone livelier. Then he handed me divorce papers, married his mistress, and moved her into the house I paid for. They thought I'd walk away quietly, that I'd just fade into the background. But they forgot one thing. The house was never just his, and I still had the deed. Before I begin, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I need to know there are still people out there who understand what it means to fight back with dignity. I was 50 years old when Greg told me he wanted a divorce. We were sitting at the same kitchen table where I used to pack his lunches, balance our bills, and help our son Darius with his homework. He couldn't even look me in the eye. Just stared at the steam rising from his coffee and said, "Ella, I think we've outgrown each other." Outgrown. Like I was an old coat he didn't want to wear anymore. We'd been married 27 years. I gave up my promotion at the bank when Darius was born because Greg's hours were unstable, and someone had to be home. I ran the house. I cooked, cleaned, kept our books balanced. I took care of his sick mother for nearly 2 years without complaint. I didn't ask for the world, just a little respect, a little loyalty. Instead, I got divorce papers on a Tuesday and silence by Wednesday. By the end of the month he moved out. Said he needed space. I found out later he didn't move into an apartment or a hotel. He moved in with her. Bridget, the woman he'd introduced to me 2 years ago as a coworker from accounting. She was 34, the same age as our son. Greg didn't even have the decency to keep it quiet. Within weeks, they were posting vacation photos, smiling on beaches, drinking wine in Napa. Meanwhile, I was alone in the home I built from nothing, sitting on furniture I picked out, staring at empty chairs. If you've ever eaten dinner alone on your birthday, while your husband was out celebrating with someone else, drop a heart in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one who understands that particular kind of emptiness. Darius tried to play neutral. Poor thing. He was 25, grown but still stuck in the middle. "I don't want to take sides," he told me. I told him, "You don't have to. I already know where everyone stands." Then one morning I got a letter in the mail. Not from Greg, from Bridget. It was printed on pink stationery like some baby shower invitation. It read, "Dear Elaine, please schedule a time to collect the rest of your belongings. Greg and I are settling in, and we'd prefer to start this new chapter without interruptions. Mornings are best. Hugs, Bridget Foster." Bridget Foster. She took my name, moved into my house, and had the gall to call me an interruption. I sat at that table again and stared at the letter for a long time. My tea had gone cold, but I hadn't even noticed. My hands were trembling, not from sadness, from rage. That house was mine. We bought it together, but I was the one who found it. The one who put down the down payment after working double shifts at the bank. My name was still on the mortgage. Greg never refinanced. He said it was too much of a hassle. Well, that hassle was about to become his problem. I picked up the phone and called my oldest friend, Monica. She'd been a lawyer for nearly 20 years and knew me better than anyone. When I explained the situation, she got quiet. Then she said, "Do you still have your name on the deed?" "Yes," I said. "He never changed it. And he never bought you out of your half?" "No." "Elaine," she said slowly, "you still legally own half that house." I blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means you don't have to ask for anything. You can file what's called a partition action. You can force a sale or make them pay you out." I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked, "Will they have to leave if they can't afford to buy me out?" Monica said, "Yes, they will." I stared out the window at the roses I planted last spring. They were blooming again like nothing had changed. I said, "Do it." Greg called me 2 days later, all puffed up pride and fake concern. "Ella, did you really hire a lawyer?" "Yes." "Why? What's the point of making this harder than it has to be?" "You already made it hard," I said. "I'm just returning the favor." He tried to guilt me like always. Told me I was bitter, that I needed to move on, that Bridget didn't feel comfortable with me being around. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "Then maybe she shouldn't be living in a house that still has my name on the title." He hung up, but it wasn't over. Bridget emailed me again, this time with attitude. She said I was embarrassing myself and should let younger people be happy. She said Greg deserved a fresh start, and I was holding on to a marriage that died years ago. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Monica again and said, "Let's turn up the heat." We filed the official court paperwork. The petition was clean, airtight, and unshakable. I wasn't making noise. I was making moves. Greg didn't see it coming, and neither did she. Monica told me to stay quiet. Let the court system speak for me. But when I pulled into the driveway that used to be mine and saw Bridget's white BMW parked in my spot, I had to take a moment to breathe. I wasn't there to start a scene. I was there to collect the last of my things like her little pink letter had suggested. Except I didn't knock. I used my key. The one Greg forgot I still had because he never bothered to change the locks. I opened the door and walked into my own living room. The couch was the same, but everything else felt off. The walls were now some pale beige that looked like a hotel lobby. My family photos were gone, replaced by framed quotes like "good vibes only" and "love wins." Looked like Pinterest threw up all over my memories. I stepped into the kitchen. She'd rearranged everything. My spice rack was gone. The mason jar that once held my tea bags now held organic lollipops. I could feel something tightening in my chest. Not sadness, but a fire building in my gut. Bridget came downstairs in one of Greg's old t-shirts. She stopped cold when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I came to get my things," I said, holding up the email she sent me. "You're supposed to schedule a time," she snapped. "We have rules now, boundaries." I walked past her calm and slow. "Well, sweetheart, as long as my name's still on this house, I'll come and go as I please." Her face flushed. "Greg will hear about this." "Good," I said. He should have been the one to greet me. I packed quietly. A few boxes, some books, a necklace from my mother. I didn't need to take much. I'd already decided I'd never live in this house again. Not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of thinking they pushed me out. Bridget followed me like a shadow, arms crossed, eyes rolling. She whispered under her breath, "Pathetic." I stopped cold. "Excuse me." She straightened her back like she was about to square up. "You couldn't hold on to your husband, so now you're playing petty games. You're jealous because he wanted someone better." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I just said, "Better doesn't last. And I'm not playing games. I'm just claiming what's mine." Then I left. That night, Monica called to say the paperwork had gone through. The court had accepted the petition action. Greg and Bridget were officially being notified the next morning. "Do you want to deliver it yourself?" she asked. "No," I said. "Let the system slap them." The next day, Greg called me 4 times. I didn't pick up. He left one voicemail. "Ella, what are you doing? This is insane. You're forcing us to sell the house after everything I've done for you." I laughed out loud. Everything he'd done for me. I was the one who sacrificed promotions, stayed through layoffs, cooked every meal, paid half the bills. I didn't walk out. He did. He tried calling again the next day, so I ignored him. On the 3rd day I picked up. "Elaine, we need to talk." "So talk. Why are you doing this?" "You mean forcing a sale of a house I still legally own? You know we can't afford to buy you out right now. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you moved her in." His tone changed, soft like the man I once knew. "Elaine, you don't need this kind of stress." "No," I said, "you don't. But you brought it on yourself." Then I hung up. 2 days later, Bridget called. Not texted. Called. She was crying. "You're ruining us," she sniffled. "You're humiliating us. Please, Elaine, be a woman about this." I paused. Being a woman means knowing your worth. And I'm done shrinking for either of you. Then I blocked her. If you think I handled this right, write justice in the comments. If you think I went too far, write too much. But be honest about what you'd do if someone tried to erase you from your own life. From that point forward, I didn't say a word. I let Monica do the talking and the paperwork do the cutting. Greg and Bridget hired a lawyer, tried to challenge the petition. It didn't work. The judge looked at the deed, the mortgage, and said the magic words. Miss Foster remains a legal co-owner. Unless the parties agree to a private buyout, the property must be sold. Monica smiled at me in court. I didn't smile back. I was still watching, still waiting. Revenge wasn't complete yet. They still had keys. They still had a kitchen. They still had heat. But now they also had a deadline. 60 days to either buy me out or get out. And I already knew they couldn't do either. Bridget wasn't working. Greg's salary hadn't changed. And now they had legal fees on top of mortgage payments. I walked past the house one morning and saw a for sale by owner sign on the lawn. They were trying to handle it themselves, avoid agent fees, maybe rush a sale. But the market was tough, and karma doesn't play favorites. I sat down at my kitchen table, my new one in my small but peaceful rental, and lit a candle. Not for them, for me. Because this wasn't about destruction. It was about restoration. And they were about to find out what it feels like to be erased from something you thought you owned. Bridget started posting vague quotes on Facebook. Some women don't know when to let go. Bitterness will rot your soul. The comments were passive-aggressive, full of staged selfies and filtered tears. But I wasn't looking for pity. I wasn't interested in what she called healing energy. This wasn't spiritual warfare. This was legal. By week 3, the for sale sign was gone from the yard, replaced with a clean, professionally printed, now listed placard. I recognized the name of the agent. Monica had made a few calls. We weren't letting them go cheap. If they were going to sell the house, it had to be at fair market value. No shady under-the-table transfer. No backdoor deal to Bridget's cousin or Greg's golfing buddy. This was a clean split, which meant they had to work with us. Greg texted me again. This time it wasn't angry. We need to talk about the staging. I didn't respond. He tried again. Can you please not remove everything? Bridget's feeling really exposed right now. I almost replied. She wasn't feeling exposed when she wore my husband's t-shirt and told me I was pathetic. But I took a breath and passed it to Monica. She handled everything with the realtor. I didn't need to step foot in that house again, and that was by design. Let them feel the walls closing in. Let them walk past the bedroom I slept in for 27 years and wonder what else they didn't know. By the time showings started, they were already unraveling. Bridget called the listing agent in tears, asking if she could delay visits until they found a new place. The agent politely reminded her this was a court-ordered sale, not a choice, a requirement. They had to keep the place spotless, ready for strangers to come in and judge their countertops. I heard through Darius that Greg was sleeping on the couch some nights, that he and Bridget were fighting constantly, that he told her, "This is what happens when you poke a bear." I wasn't a bear. I was the deed. They didn't just underestimate me. They misunderstood me entirely. I wasn't the kind of woman to scream or throw things. I was the kind of woman who signed documents with a steady hand and waited for the storm I planted to bloom. At week 5, an offer came in. Full asking price, no contingencies. The buyer was a young black couple expecting their first child. They fell in love with the house immediately. Monica told me before she told anyone else. They wanted a fast 2-week close. I said, "Perfect." Greg called me 3 times that day. I didn't answer. I was at my nail appointment getting a shade called brick dust. I liked the symbolism. Later that evening I checked my voicemail. First message, "Elaine, come on. This is bigger than just us. You don't want to do this." Second message, "You're really going to let strangers walk into our home and erase everything." Third message, "I know we ended badly, but this is vindictive. You're not leaving us with anything." It was the first time he said it out loud. Us. As if they were a unit now, as if his betrayal had matured into something legitimate. I suppose that was his way of saying Bridget was in this with him, for better or worse. Unfortunately for them, worse was what I had left. The day of the final walkthrough, Greg had to be out of the house for 4 hours. I know this because Monica told me they requested a brief extension to clean up. The buyers had already scheduled movers. There was no more time left. When they left that house, they weren't owners. They were trespassers with keys that no longer worked. Me? I was $370,000 richer. Greg finally broke his silence in person. He showed up at my new place, a quiet little 2-bedroom unit with a garden view, and knocked like he still had the right. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He looked smaller, not thinner, just shrunken, like gravity had finally caught up with his lies. "I came to ask you something," he said. I crossed my arms. "Can you help us with the deposit on our new place? We're short." I stared at him. "Excuse me." He raised his hands. I know how it sounds, but we had no idea you'd go this far. We thought. You thought I'd stay quiet, I finished for him. He nodded. You've never been the spiteful type. I'm not spiteful, I said. I'm strategic. There's a difference. He shifted, awkward in his stance. Bridget's staying with her sister. I'm at a hotel in River Park. I didn't think it would end like this. You ended it, I reminded him. You made your choices. You moved her into my house before the ink on our divorce was dry. He had the nerve to look hurt. We were in love. Love doesn't steal. Love doesn't lie. And love damn sure doesn't send me a letter on pink paper asking me to schedule pickups like I was some stranger. His eyes dropped to the floor. I leaned against the door frame. You didn't just replace me, Greg. You erased me. So I did the same. He stood there for a second, then nodded slowly. No argument, no outburst, just quiet understanding. The kind of silence that follows true defeat. When he left, I didn't close the door right away. I watched him walk away. I thought about the years I spent shrinking so he could feel tall. Thought about every time I bit my tongue so he could save face. Thought about the nights I cried in that house while he was working late. And I smiled. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with sirens or applause. Sometimes it comes with a signature on a dotted line. And the sound of a man realizing he bet everything on someone who didn't even read the fine print. Let them figure out where to go next because I already knew where I was headed. A week after the sale closed, the house I helped build became someone else's fresh start. I didn't cry. I didn't even drive by. Monica offered to meet me for lunch to celebrate, and we did. Over catfish and collard greens. She toasted me with sweet tea and said, "You did what most people only dream of doing. You made them feel what they made you feel, powerless." I nodded, but inside it wasn't just about revenge. It was about restoration, peace, closure, and if I'm being honest, maybe just a little bit of vengeance too. Greg and Bridget had officially vacated the property 2 days before closing. The real estate agent told Monica they left it clean but cold, like a hotel room after checkout. I could picture it. Bridget trying to fluff pillows while cursing under her breath. Greg probably stomping through each room, grumbling about lawyers, paperwork, and me. They thought I was petty, but I wasn't the one who crossed the line first. They did that when they moved her into my home like I had never existed. Darius called me the next evening. "Mom," he said hesitantly, "Dad's not doing great." I stayed silent. "He's staying with a friend for now. He said something about his credit being shot," said Bridget's blaming him for everything. "She should," I said plainly. "He let her play queen in a castle that wasn't his." Darius sighed. "I don't want to take sides." "You already did," I said gently, "when you stayed quiet while they treated me like a ghost." He didn't respond to that. Just whispered, "I'm sorry." I didn't need him to grovel. I just needed him to understand the depth of what had happened. Not just to me but to the idea of family, loyalty, respect. Later that week, I got an email from Bridget. It started with the usual faux politeness. "Elaine, I know we've had our differences." She went on to say they were looking for a new place but having a hard time. She asked if I'd be willing to loan them part of the money from the house sale to help them get back on their feet. She even had the gall to write, "After all, it's not like you need it as much as we do." I stared at the screen for a long time, blinking slowly. Then I hit delete. No reply, no engagement, no reaction. That silence would be louder than anything I could say. Monica told me they'd likely end up in a rental. A downgrade, which is poetic, she added. Because they treated you like a downgrade. I spent the next few weeks in something close to peace. I picked up a part-time job at the library, something to keep my mind active. The work was quiet, respectful, and surrounded by stories which felt fitting. I had my own small place now, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Fully mine. No shared deed. No waiting on approval. No second toothbrush in the bathroom. Just space, solitude, and healing. One afternoon, while shelving books, a woman in her 40s approached me. She recognized me from church years ago. She said, "Ella, I heard what happened. I just want to say you handled that with grace." I thanked her, but she leaned in and whispered, "And power." That part stayed with me. Power. I never thought of myself that way before, but I suppose it takes a certain kind of strength to lose everything and build something better in its place. Quietly, intentionally, without begging for permission or validation. A few days later I saw Greg again. Not by choice. I was picking up groceries when I noticed a man sitting on the bench outside the pharmacy. He looked tired, hair unkempt, shirt wrinkled. It took me a second to realize it was him. He saw me and stood quickly. "Elaine." "Hey." I nodded but didn't stop walking. He followed me to my car. "I'm not trying to fight," he said. "I just wanted to talk." I paused. "Talk about what, Greg?" He shifted on his feet. I didn't think you had it in you." I raised my brow. "The court stuff, the house, everything." I leaned against my car door, arms crossed. "You thought I was too weak to fight back." He rubbed his face. "No, I thought you'd be too tired." That hit me deeper than I expected because he was right about one thing. I had been tired. Tired of being dismissed. Tired of being the background to someone else's spotlight. But then I realized tired isn't the same as done. "Well," I said softly, "I guess you miscalculated." He chuckled, bitter and sad. "Bridget left." I blinked. "Already?" She said I embarrassed her. That she gave up everything for a man who couldn't even keep a roof over her head. "And she's wrong?" I asked. He didn't answer. I stared at him for a moment, then opened my car door. "Good luck, Greg." He reached out like he wanted to say more, but I was already sliding into the driver's seat. I didn't owe him another conversation. Not anymore. When I got home that evening, I opened the folder Monica had given me weeks ago. It had all the paperwork from the sale, the deed transfer, the final payout statement, and something extra. A handwritten note from Monica that said, "You didn't just cash out, you cashed in on your piece." I folded the note and tucked it into my drawer. And then I made myself a glass of wine, lit a candle, and turned on the radio. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something or mourning something or holding on to something. I was just living. And the silence around me wasn't loneliness anymore. It was freedom. About 2 months after I saw Greg outside that pharmacy, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting right away. Slanted, rushed, and looped, just like the way Bridget signed her name on the pink stationery she used to send me that ridiculous message months ago. I opened the envelope with steady hands, already knowing it wouldn't be an apology. And I was right. Bridget wasn't the apologizing type. It was a guilt trip on paper. A whimper dressed up in passive aggression. One of those "you win, but look what you've done" letters. She said I'd ruined 2 lives and shattered a future like I hadn't simply taken back what was already mine. Near the bottom she scribbled, "Hope it was worth it." I folded the letter neatly and slid it under the nearest coaster on my dining table. I didn't tear it up. I didn't burn it. I didn't even cuss under my breath. Because it was worth it. Every second of silence, every signature on every page, every tear I never let them see. Later that week, Darius invited me to dinner. He'd been trying to reconnect more lately. I could tell the fog had lifted for him. Maybe he was starting to see Greg and Bridget without the polish. I didn't hold his silence against him anymore. Not because it didn't hurt, but because holding it would only weigh me down longer. We met at a small restaurant near the marina. Nothing fancy but cozy enough that it felt like home. He looked like the boy I used to read bedtime stories to, only now with a grown man's face and guilt in his eyes. After we ordered, he fidgeted with the edge of his napkin. "I want to say thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not letting him get away with it." I stared at him for a second, not because I was surprised, but because it felt so long overdue. "I didn't know how to stop him," he admitted. "But you did. You didn't just lose a husband. You lost your dignity in that marriage. And then you turned around and took it back on your terms." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I just took a deep breath and said, "I didn't do it to punish him, baby. I did it so I could breathe again. So the next woman like me doesn't feel like she has to disappear just because someone said she's not enough." He reached across the table and held my hand. "I've got a guest room," he said. "You can come stay with me anytime. We'll find you a new house, something better. Something that's yours and only yours." I smiled, but I shook my head. "I already have something better," I said. "Peace." A week later, I found myself walking into a women's seminar at the community center. Monica had signed me up as a speaker without asking. "Typical Monica," she said. "Just talk about your story." You'd be surprised how many women need to hear it. I didn't want to at first. I wasn't some polished keynote speaker. I was just a woman who'd survived humiliation and betrayal. But when I looked around that room at the tired eyes, the tightly folded arms, the weary smiles, I saw myself. Not the polished version. Not the woman sitting there with clean paperwork and peace. I saw the Elaine who used to cry into her pillow when no one was watching. The Elaine who used to think staying silent was the same thing as staying strong. So I stood up and I told them everything. Not just about Greg or Bridget or the lawsuit. I told them about the nights I spent eating dinner alone in the house I paid for. About the way people looked at me like I was the ex-wife who couldn't move on. About the way silence can become its own prison when no one listens anymore. And then I told them how I got free. Not through rage. Not through begging. Not through violence or drama. But through knowing the power of timing, the strength of strategy, and the value of a signature on the right piece of paper. When I finished, one woman hugged me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "You reminded me that it's not too late. It's never too late." That night, I went home and pulled out a fresh journal. Not the one I'd used to write heartbreak letters to myself years ago. A brand new one, untouched. And on the first page I wrote, "This is not a second chapter. This is a whole new book." Share this story with someone who needs to remember that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. Like this video if you've ever had to remind someone who they were dealing with. And subscribe because every woman deserves to know her own power. The next morning, Monica called with an update. The couple who bought my old home had fully moved in. They were a young Black couple expecting their first child in the spring. They painted the back office into a nursery and turned my old garden into a vegetable patch. They said it finally feels like a home, she told me. That made me smile for the first time in days. That house deserved love. It deserved laughter again. It deserved warmth that wasn't forced. As for Greg, last I heard he was renting a condo in a strip mall complex, rooming with some guy who charged him for using the washer and dryer. Bridget? She ghosted from social media. Some say she moved back to Ohio. Others say she works part-time retail and tells people she used to live in a big house. I don't really care because the day they decided I was expendable, when they moved her into my home and treated me like a footnote, they handed me the match. All I did was strike it. Now I sit in a kitchen that's entirely mine. There's no echo of anyone else's footsteps. Just me, my mug of tea, and the hum of a life I built from the ashes. The mug I'm holding says unbothered and paid. It was a gift from Monica, and it makes me laugh every time I sip from it. I don't think about what I lost anymore. I think about what I reclaimed. My dignity, my voice, my damn name. And the best part? I did it all without ever raising my voice. Because silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's a warning. And sometimes it's the beginning of war. Some people think the story ends once you've won. Once you've served the papers, close the sale, and watch the people who disrespected you pack boxes and vanish. They think that's the finish line. Revenge complete. Peace restored. Curtain closed. But life keeps going. And sometimes the most powerful part of your story begins after everyone assumes you've faded. That was me. After Greg and Bridget disappeared from my life, one to a rental complex with thin walls, the other to obscurity in a town that didn't know her name, I didn't throw a party. I didn't strut around like a queen. I simply exhaled. It was the kind of breath you don't realize you've been holding until your lungs ache from relief. I took that money from the house sale, over $370,000 after fees and taxes. And I didn't splurge. I didn't buy a sports car or fly to Bali. I sat down with Monica and did what every woman who's been underestimated should do. I made a plan. We met with a financial planner, a Black woman who walked in with natural curls, pearl earrings, and eyes sharper than a hawk. She looked over my documents, asked the right questions, and said, "Let's make sure this money outlives the betrayal." I smiled. That's exactly what I wanted. I invested half. Bought a small but modern condo in my name only. No co-signers, no shared anything. Everything from the light switch to the mailbox belonged to me. Then I disappeared. Not in the dramatic sense. Not in the fake my own death sense. I mean socially, emotionally, digitally. I deactivated my social media accounts. Stopped attending the same church where whispers followed me like perfume. I let people wonder where I went. Let them guess whether I'd lost it or moved on. I moved on. All right. 2 states away. A quiet town in northern New Mexico. Far from the chaos, far from the memories, far from anyone who would ever introduce me as Greg's ex-wife. Out here, people know me as Miss Foster, the woman who volunteers at the animal shelter, who bakes too much banana bread, who plants marigolds and sings old gospel songs on her porch. No one here knows that I once cried myself to sleep in a house that was legally mine but emotionally stolen. No one knows that my silence once fed someone else's ego. And I like it that way. Every now and then I get emails from old acquaintances. People who used to pity me now suddenly want to check in. Sometimes it's women going through something similar, asking if I have advice. Sometimes it's gossip disguised as concern. And once it was Greg. He wrote me a short email last fall. The subject line said simply, "I'm sorry. I didn't even open it. Deleted it on site because sometimes silence is the final answer. The kind of silence that closes doors permanently." But I didn't stop there. One day I sat on my patio looking over my new garden, and I realized I wasn't done planting. Not just flowers but something bigger, something lasting. So I took a portion of the sale money, $50,000, and donated it to a local women's legal fund. Anonymous, no plaque, no announcement. Just a wire transfer and a note that said, "For the women who don't yet know they're allowed to fight back." The fund director later wrote in their newsletter that the donation helped 3 women escape abusive marriages. 2 of them used it to file lawsuits that changed their lives. That's what real legacy looks like. Not just surviving the storm, but lighting a torch for the women still stuck in the dark. I don't tell people everything. They don't know the details. They don't know about the pink stationery or the court hearing or how Greg looked when he realized I wasn't bluffing. But sometimes I sit at my kitchen table, sunlight pouring in, a fresh cup of tea in hand, and I write it all down. Not for them. For me. To remind myself of who I was when I walked through fire and came out clean. You see, Greg didn't just lose a wife. He lost access to my loyalty, my softness, my silence. Bridget didn't just lose a house. She lost the illusion that she could build happiness on someone else's ashes and not get burned. They both learned a lesson most people never see coming. Never assume the quiet ones are weak. Never assume the polite ones don't know how to destroy you legally. Never assume the woman you wronged has nothing left to lose. Because sometimes she's just waiting for the right moment. And when that moment comes, she won't yell. She won't cry. She won't even look back. She'll cash out. And you'll be left homeless. Not just without a roof but without peace. So now when I sip from my mug that says unbothered and paid, I do it slowly because I've earned every ounce of this peace. And I want it to last a lifetime. My name is Elaine Foster. I was divorced, discarded, and disrespected. And then I reminded them legally, financially, spiritually who they were dealing with. They bet against the wrong woman. And now I sleep well. I laugh often. And I never answer blocked calls. That's not revenge. That's recovery. If you've made it this far in my story, I want you to know something. You matter. Your peace matters. Your dignity matters. And if someone has tried to make you invisible, tried to erase you from your own life, you have more power than you think. Write "I matter" in the comments if you needed to hear that today. And if you know someone who's been thrown away like yesterday's newspaper, share this story with them. Sometimes we need to see someone else stand up before we remember we have legs. You know what the funniest part is? Greg called me one more time about 6 months after everything was settled. I was watering my marigolds on the front porch when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Elaine. His voice was different. Smaller. "What do you want, Greg?" "I just wanted to tell you something." I waited. "You were right. About everything. Bridget, the house, all of it. I messed up." I set down my watering can and sat in my rocking chair. And I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not just for the divorce but for how I did it. For moving her in. For treating you like you didn't matter. The old me would have cried. Would have asked if we could try again. Would have accepted the apology like it was a gift I should be grateful for. But the new me just said, "I know you are." He was quiet for a long moment. "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I looked out at my garden, at the life I'd built with my own hands, at the peace I'd fought for and won. "Greg, forgiveness isn't something I give to you. It's something I give to myself. And I forgave you the day I stopped letting your choices control my life. So we're okay?" I smiled even though he couldn't see it. We're nothing. And that's exactly how it should be. I hung up and went back to watering my flowers. That night I called Monica. He apologized. I told her. How'd that feel? I thought about it. Like closing a book I finished reading a long time ago. She laughed. That's my girl. 2 years have passed since then. 2 years of waking up in a bed that's mine, in a house that's mine, in a life that's completely and totally mine. I've made new friends here in New Mexico. Women who know me as I am now, not as someone's discarded wife. We have coffee on Saturday mornings, tend our gardens and talk about books and dreams and the future. None of them know about Greg or Bridget or the house unless I choose to tell them. And that choice, that power to control my own story, feels better than any revenge I could have planned. Sometimes, late at night when the desert is quiet and the stars are bright, I think about the woman I used to be. The one who packed lunches and balanced checkbooks and bit her tongue. The one who thought love meant shrinking herself so someone else could shine. I don't miss her, but I'm grateful to her. She did what she had to do to survive. She kept the deed in her name. She saved the money. She built the foundation that I'm standing on now. And when the time came, she handed me the tools I needed to rebuild. If you're listening to this and you're that woman right now, the one who's being told she's too old, too boring, too much, too little, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not expendable. You are not replaceable. You are not a rough draft of someone else's happiness. You are the author of your own story. And if someone tries to edit you out, you have the power to write them out instead. Take inventory of what's yours. Check those deeds, those accounts, those documents. Know your rights. Know your worth. And when the time comes to fight, don't fight with screaming or begging or tears. Fight with lawyers. Fight with paperwork. Fight with the quiet, devastating power of a woman who knows exactly what she's owed. Subscribe to this channel if you believe every woman deserves to know her own strength. Like this video if you've ever had to remind someone who they were dealing with. And comment below with your own story of standing up, speaking out, or simply refusing to disappear. Because that's what this is really about. Not revenge. Not even justice, though that's part of it. It's about refusing to disappear. It's about saying with your actions instead of your words, I was here. I mattered. And you will remember that you underestimated me. My name is Elaine Foster. I am 63 years old. I live in a house I own. In a town where nobody knows my old pain. Surrounded by flowers I planted and friends I chose. I sleep through the night. I wake up smiling. And when people ask me for advice about difficult marriages or painful divorces, or what to do when someone tries to make you invisible, I tell them the same thing. Document everything. Know what's yours. And never, ever let anyone convince you that quiet means weak. Because sometimes the quietest women make the loudest statements. And sometimes the best revenge is a life so good, so peaceful, so completely your own that the people who tried to destroy you become footnotes in a story they thought they were writing. The end. Now hit that notification bell because next week I'm going to tell you about my neighbor Martha, who caught her daughter-in-law stealing from her jewelry box and handled it in a way that would make you proud. Until then, remember, you matter, your story matters, and you have more power than anyone who's ever tried to silence you wants you to know.